All right, talking about surround sound and how to get started, because you're all locked away in quarantine. Firstly, if you're not willing to spend $1,000 over a period of time, do not bother with a surround sound. Because the first thing you need to purchase is a home theater receiver, an AVR. And those are going to run you anywhere from $200 to $400 to anything to the sky. And you need one of those if you're going to do a surround sound. What I would recommend, if you don't have that budget, get something small, a simple 2.0 or 2.1 amplifier. Topping MX3 is my pick. Has fiber optic input. You go from your television out. Usually televisions have a fiber optic output. You go straight into the little MX3 to a pair of speakers. RB42s are my usual choice. That is enough to satisfy you over what you would get out of a soundbar, or definitely at what you get out of a television and its internal speakers for, I don't know, $300. Now, if you are willing to go the surround sound route, I'm going to say this to you. A center channel is very important, probably the thing you should spend the most money on out of everything. I'm not using one because I happen to have a borrowed set of $4,000 speakers. If you need a center channel, you got to spend in it. If you don't need a center channel, if you are one person or two people, or if you have a very small apartment, or if your speakers are far enough apart, you can skip the center channel entirely. Again, just left and right, like I talked about before. However, this is still a surround sound. You still have side channels, back channels, if you can use them, a dedicated subwoofer for 0.1. This still counts as a surround sound. If you need to put a center channel, spend all your money there. Now, as far as subwoofers go, they are not determined by your budget. They're determined by your room. This room is 18 by 15 with a giant opening and 9-foot ceilings. I need a giant subwoofer to make this room shake. If you have a smaller room, you don't need a subwoofer that large. But if you've got a giant room and you try to put a small subwoofer in it, it's probably not going to perform even close to what you're expecting. You can use multiple subwoofers if that is an option. The overall, however, fuck. So you want to put together a surround sound on a budget. Well, you have two options. First option, start slow. Don't spend all your money. Don't start with a 5.1 or a 7.1 or an 11.4. Yes, that's a thing. Look it up. First thing you're going to need is a surround sound receiver. If you can't afford a surround sound receiver, you should probably look at a 2.0 setup. One of those, either refurbished, new, it doesn't really matter as long as you get a brand that you trust, or actually more like a brand that people like me trust. Marantz, Denon, Yamaha, those are my top three. You can then go and look at just one pair of speakers. If your budget is low, you have to have that first. Then pick some speakers. They don't have to be these particular triangle thetas, but they have to be something. And once you have two speakers and a surround receiver, you are free to add on. You can add a center channel if you wanted. You can add a subwoofer if you wanted. You can then add the rear channels, either 2 or 4, depending on what you have purchased, whether it's a 5.1 or a 7.1. Usually a 7.1 would only be considered if you have a large amount of space behind where you're sitting so that you can put speakers behind you. If this couch was against the wall, there would only be 5.1 in this room. Where you spend your money, let's put it that way. Get the minimum surround receiver. If you get it from one of those 3 brands, it has all the inputs you need. Forget about most of the other features. As far as room correction, they're all coming with like one of the better room corrections. Get the minimum receiver you need to survive. Spend most of your money on a center channel. If you need a center channel. If you are alone, like I am because of quarantine, odds are you will not need a center channel because you don't need a center channel for music. When you're listening to music, 2 speakers is fine. You got a beautiful center image. That's where the singer comes from. Same will happen in movies as long as you tell your surround receiver that I do not have a center, and then everything gets put to both, and it's perfect. However, if you do have multiple people in your family, people sitting there, people sitting there, people sitting there, and they want to focus the audio and hear the voices clearer, a center channel needs to be installed. Once a center channel has to be put into a system, that should consist of half of your speaker budget. Whatever your budget is, $500, $1,000, $10,000, half of it goes right in front of this TV. And then once you put that there, the rest of these speakers become effects speakers. My rear channels here are cheap, $60, $80 for those, $60 a pair for these. They're only effects channels. Do not waste your budget on nice, fancy, matching rear channels. That is the biggest waste. If you do interesting up bounce or you mount things properly, you aim them, you get them set up with microphones, it does not have to match the front. Too many people spend $800, $900 in their rear channels. They do not need to do that. It's more of an aesthetic thing. If you cannot fathom doing this, if $1,000, which is like about the minimum by the time you spend on the receiver, a set of speakers for the front, a basic subwoofer, which by the way, the subwoofer is determined by the size of the room, not by the size of your wallet. So you may just forego a subwoofer until you can afford the right one. If all of this is too much, a basic 2.0 with just a topping MX3, linked in the description, and a set of RB42s, linked in the description, can put together enough sound to impress almost anyone for roughly $300. Done, out the door. Plug your TV in fiber optic to the amp, you got a little remote, that's it. You do not have an option to upgrade to a surround sound from that, unless you keep the speakers and sell the amp. So I think as long as you are willing to go with a surround receiver first, this is the first thing you purchase, as long as that is the first thing you purchase, you have the option to slowly, over time, add things. Add the center, add the sub. Which one is more important to you at the time? Or don't add either of those things, keep the front two, just add rears. Go with the 4.0, and then go with the 4.1, and then maybe go with the 5.1. Or just go with 3.0, just the center channel on left and right. There's many upgrade paths you can follow, and every one of them will add a different experience to what you're watching, listening to. So just figure out how you want to assemble your perfect home theater. So you want to assemble the perfect home theater on a budget because we're all locked up in quarantine. Well, I have a few simple rules. Number one, know how much you're going to spend. If you don't think $1,000 is too much, then you're good for it. Yeah, fucking. Welcome to Building a Home Theater with Zeos. I'm your host, Zeos Pantera. This is Z Reviews, and I run the forum Hi-Fi Guides and Buying Guide. And we're going to talk real quick about how you should build up a home theater. Because it isn't something you just sit down and throw your entire savings at and it's done. At least it shouldn't be. Building a home theater is a very simple process. First thing you need is a surround receiver. You can buy refurbished, you can buy anything you want, as long as it comes from at least a brand that, while I personally would say I trust, Marantz, Denon, or Yamaha are my three favorite surround receivers. There are other ones out there, little outliers, but you get a surround receiver first. Once you have a surround receiver, you then need at least two speakers. They don't have to be these triangles. They could be any number of things. I will link RB42s. They're like the cheapest speaker that I like. They're small speakers though. But once you have a surround receiver and two speakers, you are free to add in any particular order the following. Either a center channel, which can be used to help locate dialogue if two speakers, which is plenty for music, is not enough for movies. If you have too much going on, if you have people sitting off to the sides, not centered, you're going to want a center channel. You're going to want to spend a lot on it. So you can add that, or two speakers, and then add a subwoofer. Now, a subwoofer is chosen by the size of the room, not by the amount of money in your wallet. So if you get too small a subwoofer, if you put a small subwoofer where I have this subwoofer, it will not really do its job. So you may want to hold off on that until you can actually assess how many hundreds of dollars you're willing to throw at it. And as far as rear channels go, this is a $4,000 set of triangle thetas from their signature line that I'm reviewing currently. That's a $60 out-of-made Canto Ben, and those are some Mica MB42s. You do not need expensive matching rear channels. That is a myth. They look nice. People will talk about the timbre matching as you go across the room as the sound changes. Bull. I have never once gone, wow, I really wish that I had $4,000 speakers in the rear. Just get cheap speakers and put them back there. And it isn't a hard thing to do. People will look up wireless. Do not get wireless, because all you need is a wire, a very small little wire that'll run along the floor and either up here and then, well, there's a going over into the ceiling. So there is effort put into it. But as long as you can get, and usually surround receivers are somewhere in the middle, in the front, as long as you can get a small, thin wire up to either a 5.1 would have two rear speakers. When you run a 7.1 like we're looking at here, you have side speakers and back speakers. So the only difference is there If you have this much space between the seating area and the wall, you can usually put back speakers, and therefore you should be looking at a 7.1 instead of a 5.1 surround receiver. And that's basically it. Build up. It's a slow build up. Home theater is a slow build up by Zeos Pantera of Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides. Instead of thinking about buying an entire home theater in one shot, you have to think about it as a small progression that could take place over a month, 6 months, a year, 10 years. Well, probably you won't want to do 10 years. That'll be terrible. But start out by looking at surround sound receivers. I recommend 3 brands: Denon, Marantz, and Yamaha. Those are the only 3 brands that I recommend in surround sound processors and receivers. Once you have one of those picked out, and you should pick it out as the followings: the least amount of money for the exact features you need, inputs you need, channels you need. The only reason you'd go from a 5.1 to a 7.1 is if you have at least 5 feet behind where you're sitting, so that you may have back speakers. If this couch was against the wall, you don't need to worry about a 5.1, putting speakers in the corners. Instead of putting rears and sides, you would have just, or backs and sides I should say, you would just have rears. Once you've picked out your surround receiver, you are now on the road to putting together a home theater. I would highly recommend just starting with 2 speakers in the front. Live like that for a while. Stereo is a wonderful thing. You can underspend slightly on the fronts because you can always move those speakers to the rear, or spend a lot on the fronts and just run those for a while. And then you have to decide the upgrade path you want to take. Either you're going to add a center channel, or you're going to add a subwoofer, or you're going to add your rear channels. Now, if you add a center channel, know this: you have to make that the most important, most expensive, most insane speaker you can in a home theater. Because once you add it, everything that's happening on screen happens in that speaker. And then even if you have a wonderful $4,000 a pair set of French-made triangles, all they're going to make is whooshing sounds. Because your surround receiver can turn on and off any channel at once. You do not need to hook every channel up to that. You could just 2. Center off, rears off, sub off. And as you go to add things, you turn them back on. Turn on the center. Now you have all the dialogue, all the action happening there. Great if you have people sitting off to the far sides. If you have more than 2 people on a couch, if you're just a couple on a couch, you could definitely get away with no center like I have here. I'm obviously alone because quarantine and madness. But once you add a center, that has to be the most important speaker you have. Now, the other options are you can just add a subwoofer, where you could have 2 in a sub, or 2 in a center, or 2 a center and a sub. The subwoofer is determined by the size of the room. I have a rather large room with an open back. I need a subwoofer that can carry the low end throughout this entire space. If you underbuy a subwoofer, you're going to regret it, and you're going to end up either having to sell that and buy another subwoofer or buy a second subwoofer. So I would recommend holding off on that until your budget reaches at least $500 for just the subwoofer. And as far as rear channels go, I don't recommend spending a lot at all. You have to have them. Surround sound is not surround sound unless it surrounds you. Now, these surround speakers are literally $80 a pair. These are Mica MB42s. Old as hell. And those are Canto Bends. They don't even make those anymore. 60 bucks for the pair. And I had them shooting up against the wall to give me a wall wash effect. You do not need expensive matching rear channels to have surround sound. You could have anything you want. You want to spend all your money up there. You want to have an amazing center channel and good left and right, or killer left and right and no center channel. But either way you do it for what your situation is. You add your subwoofer for your room, and you add just whatever rear channels from the garbage you want, because it doesn't matter. They're literally playing whizzes and bangs and whooshes. And I would have demonstrated that if I was on my real channel and not doing a short clip. So that's my advice. If you can't do any of this, if all this is too complicated, 2.0 is still an answer. A Topping MX3 is a little tiny box with a remote control. You plug 2 speakers into it. You plug a fiber optic into it from your television. You open up your Netflix on your television. It sends the sound. You're done. That's a $300 total solution. You can get all at once, but there is no upgrade path. This, once you have one of those, once you have a receiver and a cat, your upgrade path is open. And you'll keep doing that, and you'll keep doing that. And come 5 years down the road, it's time to change that out, but I can keep my sub. but maybe I should move these good speakers to the back and then put better speakers in the front. There's a whole world of ways you can go about it. So that's it. Surround sounds are not very complicated. You just have to know what you're buying, when you're buying it, and how much to spend. That's all from Z Reviews and Zeos Pantera. See you on the internet, guys. I'm Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides, and I've got a lot to say and not much time to say it. So you want to put up a fucking fuck? You want to fuck your mom? Fuck it. Let's fuck that bitch. She's a fucking slut. All right, getting set. You guys can edit this out. Thank you very much. I'm gonna hit this button. Oh, I missed the morning.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews, and I have to have 2 minutes to tell you what I think a good starter home theater would look like. Well, we don't have much time, so let's get right to it. You need to start with a receiver, a decent surround receiver from a decent company. You only have to worry about 5.1 or 7.1 if you have at least 5 feet behind the listener to put back channels. Otherwise, you just use rear channels. In a 7.1, you have side and... Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? With the dinking? Shit!
Morning.
All right, let's talk about putting together a home theater. I am Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides, and I have way less than 2 minutes to tell you how to do it. So first things first, you're going with a surround receiver, you gotta go with a brand you can trust. Pioneer is not, Morning. My name is Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides, and I'm here to tell you how to put together a surround sound system on a budget, or at least the way I would do it. First thing you need to do is pick a surround sound receiver. That's it. If you don't have this, you don't have surround sound. Denon, Marantz, Yamaha. Those are the 3 brands I trust. Anything in them should be fine. Look for the cheapest unit that fulfills the needs you have for the number of speakers, inputs, and features. Usually that's about it. Number of speakers is determined either 7.1 or 5.1. If you have enough space behind your sitting area to put back channels, you want a 7.1. If this couch was against a wall, you only need a 5.1 because you're putting them in the corners. So that's it. That's it. That's all you need to know about a surround receiver. Next, you're going to need at least 2 speakers. And I know, Zeos, that's not surround, it's only 2, but you got to start somewhere. Do not think that you have to buy this entire 5.1 or 7.1 in one go. Most people don't. You get a good, cheap receiver, because that's the thing that's going to get replaced the most. It's going to be obsolete in probably 4 or 5 years. And you're going to get decent front channels. Why do I say decent? Because those speakers can always move to the back. You're going to get good ones. You're going to listen to them. I do not have in my center channel a center channel, as you can blatantly see. That's because center channels are optional. After you have left and right, you can decide which way to go. Do you want to add a center? Would you like to add a subwoofer? Would you like to add rear channels? Obviously, the goal is to have the whole thing, everything going for you. But I will say this, if you get a center, you need to spend half of your speaker budget on that speaker. Because once this stuff's happening on screen and you have a center, that's the only speaker that's taking care of it. Your very expensive left and rights, those are no longer doing the bulk of the work. So if you are sitting alone or you are just a couple, you can absolutely go without a center channel for a long time or permanently. So get your left and right set up. RB42s are great. As far as subwoofer, you need to spend on a subwoofer that will fill your space. It doesn't matter what your budget is. You have a 200... Wow, that was the fastest 2 minutes of my whole life. All right, I gotta bulk up my speed. Gotta bulk my speed. There's so much information. I have to give so much information. Damn it, that was the first one. I really want that to coincide. Morning. My name is Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides, and I have a very short amount of time to tell you how to do this. Buy a surround receiver. You need that for surround sound. You only need 5.1. If you need this much space behind your couch, you need a 7.1. Otherwise, the couch is back there. You only need a 5.1. Denon, Yamaha, or Marantz. Those are the 3 brands I trust the most. That's it. Next, you need at least 2 speakers. Anything you want to spend. You want to spend cheap? Spend cheap. You want to spend a lot? Spend a lot. Once you have a surround receiver and 2 speakers, you can only go up from there. Do not do this all at once. Spend your time putting together a surround receiver and processor and everything else. Spend your time building up a home theater. The subwoofer can come next, or a center channel can come next, or the rear channels can come next. You don't need them all at once, but you need at least that surround receiver and at least a left and right speaker. Once you have that, you can then determine, do you need better clarity from your vocals? Better clarity from your vocals. Okay, fucked it up. Fuck. I'm speaking so fast. This is almost impossible. Morning, my name is Zeos Pantera from Z Reviews and Hi-Fi Guides, and I'm here to give you the very, very short 2-minute rundown of what I think you should do to set up a proper, cheap home theater. You need a surround receiver, either a 7.1 or a 5.1. 7.1 or 5.1 is determined by your room. If you have this much space behind your couch, you can go with back channels and side channels, and then you can use a 7.1. If not, if this couch is against the wall, you only need a 5.1. Solved. You only should buy either a Denon, a Marantz, or a Yamaha. Those are the 3 brands I trust. Boom, 30 seconds down. Now, once you have a surround receiver, you need at least 2 speakers. At least 2. You could start with just 2. You'd be very happy for the rest of your life with just 2 speakers. But then once you have 2 speakers, you set your surround sound receiver to not have a center, a sub, or rears. And you could use it just fine. Now you have to determine, what are you getting? Because if you get a center channel, that's where all your money needs to be spent. Center channel is the most important speaker. Not the subwoofer, not the rears, center channel. If you're gonna spend on one, spend on one. But you could just not spend on one like I have, because I have very good left and rights. Now, when you get a subwoofer, that's determined by the size of your room, not by your budget. If your budget is really small and your subwoofer is really small and you've got a giant open space 9-foot ceiling room, it's not gonna be worth it. Wait, save up, buy a real subwoofer. As far as rear channels go, these are $60 a pair rear channels. They don't need to match, they don't have to look the same, they don't even have to be the same brand, color, nothing. Just get channels in the rear, because if you don't have rear channels, you don't have a surround sound. That's why it's called a surround sound. It has to surround you. So what have we learned? Buy a good receiver from you trust. Spend the least amount of money you have to on it. Get just the amount of channels you need. Get just the amount of inputs you need. Expensive receivers will be a waste, because in 5 years, they're all going to be sold on eBay. You need to keep a good one. You're not going to get it. Get as good a speaker as you can for the front. If you have to get a sub, get an even better center. Add the sub for your room, and rear channels, they gotta be cheap. And then sit down and enjoy movies. Boom! Hit it in 2 minutes. I'll see you guys on the internet, or on my couch, or with my cat. Where is she?